We'll tell you more about that a little bit later. Joining me now is Gerald Celente, publisher of the Trends Journal and the TrendsJournal.com, History Before It Happens. He's a specialist in trending, anticipating events, and oftentimes anticipating events based on knowledge that he has been made privy to. John Connally, then Texas governor in 1963, on the day of the assassination, had a conversation later in life, about, nearly 30 years after the assassination, had a conversation with Gerald Celente. And Gerald Celente joins us now. Hello, Gerald.
Hello, Glenn.
How are you? Great for you to join us. John Connally, who was the governor of Texas, who was in the limousine, along with Mrs. Kennedy and John Kennedy and Mrs. Connally, and actually took a bullet as well, had a conversation with you in Dallas, nearly 30 years after the assassination. What did he tell you?
Well, what happened was I had written the book Trend Tracking, and it was in 1989, and I had forecast in that book a new third-party movement. And for some reason, I mentioned Ross Perot as the type of political maverick. And this is 2 weeks now before the 92 election, and Connally asked to meet me meet him in Dallas.
Why did he ask to meet you?
Well, he wanted to know how come I forecasted it and what I saw coming. How could I have picked that out? So we had lunch at the Anatole Hotel, and then about four of us piled into a limousine, and we went to the book depository. I sent you a photo of me, him, and his wife Nellie in front of the book depository. And as we were sitting out in front of the depository in the limousine, he started saying what happened that day. He said, "I heard a gunshot, and I looked over to my right." He said, "I know it was a gunshot because I've been hunting since I'm a little boy." And, of course, that's where the grassy knoll was. The way we were parked to the right was the grassy knoll. He said, "I was wearing a dark blue suit that day. I was having a Stetson hat. I was holding it on my knee. It was all crunched up in the limousine. In those days, they had the jump seats." And he said, "I looked to my left, and there were brains on my shoulder." He said, "I know they were brains because my daddy was a butcher." And he went on to explain what happened, how Nellie threw himself on top of him, and how they got to Parkland in about 12 minutes. And what saved his life was that there was a doctor that was on break, and he saw the motorcade come screaming into Parkland, and he happened to be a thoracic surgeon. And, of course, Connally's lung was blown open. And so the story goes on, but and I knew he was a dying man, by the way. My father, may rest in peace, died of asbestos poisoning, and this is in October of 1992. Connally passed on in June of '93, and he was on heavy doses of prednisone because of the lung wound was, I think he had adhesions, and they were trying to temper it down. And so I could see the same kind of death that was going through him that I saw in my dad. So we're going back into the Anatole Hotel, and he stops me, and he looks at me, and he said, "I read your book, Trend Tracking." He said, "It's a fine piece of work." And he said, "I know your heart's in the right place." He said, "But you don't have a clue what's going on. And neither do the American people, because if they did, there'd be a revolution in this country."
So Gerald, I want to get back to the significance of what Connally told you. Why is this considered? Why is this a revelation to you? What did he say that you found startling?
He said there'd be a revolution in this country if the people knew what was going on. This is a guy that was the Democratic governor of Texas.
Wait a minute. So he wasn't there to tell you. You initially said that he regaled you with a tale of hearing a shot coming from his right and then noticing brain matter to his left. Are you saying that is significant in some way, or are you saying something else is?
No, I'm just telling you the story of what he was telling us. What was significant was what he told me, that if the American people knew what was going on in this country, there would be a revolution.
Did he mean then or now?
This is what he was saying back in '92.
About the 1963 time period, or about current American politics?
About the state of the nation in '92. That how corrupt it was then. Now, remember, this is the guy who was the Treasury Secretary under Nixon, who told Nixon actually to pack his bags. The game was over. This was a man on the inside telling me how corrupt the nation was, and that if the American people knew the extent of it, there would be a revolution going on.
But was he somehow making a connection between corruption in 1992 America and the assassination of Kennedy 30 years previous.
No, he was just talking about the state of what was going on. I was just relating to what was going on, how all this came about and how, we met and what he had told me about the state of the American political system, how corrupt it was, and that if the American people knew the extent of it, remember this is coming from a former Treasury Secretary, that there would be a revolution. Now remember, this is a time, Glenn, when, America, we were just getting out of the recession of 92. The digital revolution's on the doorstep. The Cold War's over. So back then it was very hard to see how bad the nation was, but it was even bad then. But now when we fast forward now, some 20 years later, you look at the polls, you look how people feel about what's going on. You see in front of us, day after day, whether it's the fiscal cliff, the closure of the government, whether it's the debt ceiling, whether it's the wars, whether it's Obamacare, on and on now. The revolution, what I'm saying is, what Connally was saying back then is becoming apparent to everybody now that wasn't so apparent back then, because if you said that back in 92, most people wouldn't believe you.
Well, one of the theories, we were talking earlier in the week, Gerald, about the different conspiracy theories that have endured over the years since the assassination 50 years ago. And one of them, to me, which is the most plausible and is best summed up in that you saw the movie JFK, the Oliver Stone movie?
Of course.
The scene with Donald Sutherland on the park bench with the Kevin Costner character, Costner's playing Jim Garrison. When Donald Sutherland's character, and Donald Sutherland, a former high-ranking official in the U.S. government, lays it all out in about, 2.5 minutes. To me, that is the explanation of the JFK assassination.
Oh, by the way, he also said he and Nellie, they said they heard 3 shots. That was what they said over and over again. There were 3 shots. There were 3 shots. We told that to the Warren Commission. So that's just, my insights of my spending time with him.
Yeah.
Months before he died. But to me, again, as you point out, the system is entirely. Look at the.
I guess I didn't expand on that. What the Sutherland character was saying in JFK is quite simply that the military-industrial complex was behind it.
Well, this is what I was going to say. Look at the report that just came out 3 days ago that hardly made the news at all from Reuters. They don't know what they did with $8.5 trillion that went from the military from 1996 to now. They can't account for it. How much more proof do people need? And if you don't believe me, you don't believe the movie, how about believing Dwight D. Eisenhower, who warned us as he was leaving office that the military-industrial complex.
What a great speech. Look it up on YouTube.
The people of the genius of the scientists, the sweat of the laborers, and the future of the children.
If there's any kids listening or anybody interested in history, Google Dwight David Eisenhower 1961 speech, U.S. military-industrial complex. It'll blow your mind. By the way, before we go, we're talking about. You sound like the Joe Pesci character in JFK.
Yeah. Well, that's that Bronx in me, An Italian.
What do you mean I'm funny? Funny how?
Excuse me?
Oh, the Pesci character in another movie. What do you mean I'm funny? Funny how? Funny ha-ha? When he starts laying into the, what the hell?
No, but, this is very serious what's going on. There's
Gerald,
a new report that just came out.
Listen, I appreciate your time. We could talk more about the future of American politics and the current state of it. But on that note, I encourage people to check out your website, the Trends Journal. You can reach it at TrendsJournal.com. History before it happens. Gerald Celente, thank you very much for your time today.
Well, thank you, Glenn.
All right. Coming back after the news, we're going to talk about, this is very timely. This is Bullying Awareness Week in Canada, and efforts are being made across the country to draw attention to the issue of bullying and how to prevent it. We're going to chat with an expert on the subject and figure out ways parents can play a role in this. And it might not be the way you think they should get themselves involved. That and more as the Gary Doyle Show continues on 570 News.